Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 36. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Fun Ideas Productions, and if everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Alvin, the story of Ross Bagdasarian Sr., Liberty Records Format Films, and The Alvin Show is out. You can order your hardback, paperback, and ebook copies today on Amazon or at bearmanormedia.com. I am currently still working on Friendly Ghosts, Little Devils, Giants, and Rich Kids, the art and creations of Warren Kremer, and the Total Television Scrapbook, and the Monkey Solo Book. Our guest today is a writer who has written books about Warren Publications, Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee, and has been the editor for Comic Book Artist and Comic Book Creator. His current book is about Robert Crumb's Weirdo. Here he is, Jon B. Cooke. All right, on the phone today I have Jon Cooke, and just wanted to talk to him a little bit about his new book about Weirdo, which was R. Crumb's humor magazine back in the 80s and 90s, and also about your other books and everything else you've done. So how are you today?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
Fine. And I guess to just start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing and graphic arts and other things that you've done.
Sure. I got interested in, I did a fanzine back when I was a teenager, when I was about 13 years old. Lasted for a year or so. Probably had a circulation of like 12. It was me and my brothers. We produced this thing. It was Xeroxed. That kind of started me off. The biggest thing was to see Locus, which is a science fiction, kind of a news zine. But back in the day, it was a little primitive looking. And I remember looking at it and thinking to myself, hey, I could do this. You know, I could do something like this. I didn't even know about comic book fanzines at all. So started my own, put an ad in the Comics Buyer's Guide and got some, got some interest, sold a few. But, I mean, there were girls. So I gave up on drawing and the fanzine stuff pretty much. But then I went to college and I got involved in a campus magazine, and that really got me interested in doing production. And I'd always been an artist and a writer, so started there. And then I went to college. And like I said, I worked on a campus magazine. Then went off and worked, and there was an H.P. Lovecraft centennial back in 1990, and I stumbled on some horror fanzines, and I said, oh, geez, I could do this. And I did. So I did Tekalili, Journal of Terror, which is a H.P. Lovecraft-inspired zine that it was well-received. I just poured way too much money into it, production-wise, so it only lasted 4 issues. But that was the beginning. So.
Yeah, I saw a few of those when I was looking at your bibliography on eBay and on Amazon. There are a few issues out there. I didn't know there was just 4, but I saw that you had done that. So that's kind of your first foray into semi-professional publishing, as it were.
Yeah, I think so. And then it was literally the very first day when I was on the web. When it was like 1995. And I just signed up for my email address with good old AOL. And the first thing, they didn't even have search engines back then, really. There was no Google that I could remember. But anyway, the first phrase I searched for was Jack Kirby, because I'm just a huge Jack Kirby freak. And that minute, I discovered the Jack Kirby Collector, and I immediately reached out to John Morrow, the publisher of Tomorrow's, and we hit it off, and I became associate editor of the Jack Kirby Collector. And then I came up with this notion of like, hey, John, how about we do a magazine for the other guys other than Jack Kirby? And that's how Comic Book Artist magazine was born, to which my friend Mark Arnold had contributed to the Harvey issue. And
yes.
That was a lot of fun.
And I think the National Lampoon issue, too, a little bit, too. So that was
Yeah.
I don't know if there's other ones, but probably those are the two main ones I remember. But, And Then you took it away for, and then went to Top Shelf with it for a while. I remember. I don't think I helped you on those, but
No, it lasted for about 5 or 6 issues at Top Shelf.
Right.
And then I was planning to do a Peter Bagg issue, and I'd done a huge interview with Peter, and
Right.
I came up with this notion of doing a complimentary feature, and that was for Weirdo magazine. And somehow I found the number for Robert Crumb, and I reached out to him and interviewed him about his stint on Weirdo. And Aileen was at home at the time, so then I spoke to her immediately afterwards. So I had these 3 interviews about it. So I reached out to other contributors at Weirdo, and very innocently thought, oh well, I'll put a few testimonials in, and whoever responds. And it was a big response, and I just. I guess I get a little pathological about this stuff. So I really reached out to virtually everybody I could.
Yeah.
But Weirdo was anyway, I never did that issue of Comic Book Artist. The recession came, and I had domestic issues that arose. I pretty much left the field for a period of time to focus on work and family. And then back in 2011, I occasionally get emails from people like, "What's going on with that? What's going on with that Weirdo thing?" So I came up with the idea of, well, maybe I should revive, Comic Book Artist magazine. And so I went to Mocha and made an announcement to 2011, and I started searching for more Weirdo contributors whom I didn't get the first time around. Then other things arose. We had a house fire. Anyway, there was a number of things that happened that pulled me off of that again. So I periodically, shelve the Weirdo retrospective, but it kept growing. And in 2013, I did it again. I think that was when I met up with Peter again, and I'd started Comic Book Creator magazine. And so I was determined to finish my commitment to Peter, and so I did an issue devoted to Peter Bagg, and he was the second Weirdo editor.
Right.
Right. And so then I just decided to do it as a book, and so I had all this stuff. I just had all these testimonials, and there was a good number of people who had passed away. I mean, there were a number of people who passed away. Right. There were, and so I really felt, I was on a mission. I really, really had to do this, and I was just tenacious in tracking people down and stuff like that. So I wrote up a prospectus, and I went to the 2015 San Diego Comic-Con. I was going to shop it around, and out of respect, because they were the first publisher. They were the publisher of Weirdo magazine. I approached Last Gasp first, and I'll never forget Ron's look on his face when I handed him his prospectus, because it had all the listing of all the people that had already contributed testimonials, and he just kind of like his jaw dropped and his eyes widened, and he just nodded, and he said, "Yeah, I want to publish this." So it was just like, "Well, okay, I came to the right place," and we worked out a deal, and then I really went full bore, and so for the past 4 years, I've just been really, really, really working on it, and then it's all come together.
Okay.
Here it is.
I'll tell you my side of the story, because as you know, somewhere along the line I did a Weirdo article. Now, I was aware that you were working on some sort of book, but I didn't know to what extent or if or when it was ever going to be published. And then it was Michael Urey of Back Issue, and you probably know him, from also Tomorrow's. He says, "Can you do an article on Weirdo?" And I actually said, "Isn't Jon Cooke working on a book on that? I mean, I don't want to step on his toes." And he says, "No, that's all right." And I go, "All right." And so I started contacting all the same people you were. And, the people that you had already contacted, they say, when is that Jon Cooke coming out with that book? He interviewed me like 3 years ago, and I still haven't seen anything. It's like, I don't know. I'm interviewing you now. So, we did kind of overlap a little bit there, but I kept saying encouraging things that, yeah, he's still working on it. He wants it to look right and blah, blah, blah. And I did finally get a copy because of, you got my Harvey book, which we can talk about later, and then I got your book, and it's like, it's fantastic. So I'm like, I haven't got all the way through it, but it's like it's more thorough than my article could ever be, and even though mine's pretty lengthy, and I'm really impressed. The question I had first, because while you're saying all this, I was thinking a zillion questions, is when you interviewed Crumb and the first people when you started, were they still in the States, or had he already moved to France?
Oh, yeah, no, they moved to France back in 92, 93.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, they had long been out of the country. I spoke to them in 2007, 2007. So, so they were in France, and it was a long-distance call.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I was just curious how that. Yeah, my contact with him, I didn't think I would get him, but he did respond, and responded well, is through email. And he was all apologetic. He says, well, I rarely use email, but, since you're here, here's the answers to your questions. And it was like, I go, wow, this makes the article here. So, anyway, were there anybody, when you were doing the book, you said some people had passed. Had they passed prior to you getting to them, or did you manage to get everyone you wanted to get?
No, actually, the one that I was not able to get, whom I had been in contact with, you were able to get in contact, and that was Macedonio Garcia, who was he was an inmate. He was a prisoner, in prison when he had contributed back to Weirdo in the Weirdo days, but he had long been out of prison by that time, and so I'd periodically get in touch with him and say, I contacted him through Facebook, and he'd say, I definitely want to do it, but let me think about it. And he did that for years. But you were able to, right? Were you able to contact him?
I think I was, and I think he just gave me a few short comments. He didn't give me a lot, but I wasn't trying to make a book. In fact, my assignment originally was supposed to be like 3 or 4 pages, and I went back to Michael and I go, this is going to be like 20 pages, I hope you know, unless we don't put any photos. And so he agreed to change it around a bit, and I got my 20-page article. I said I can cut it, but it probably won't be very good if I cut it. And fortunately, he decided to run the full length. And I did meet a lot of the people you said so far. Like I did talk to Peter a bit, and I talked to Ron a bit. I met up with Bill Griffith. Couple others I met too. It was funny. I don't know if you're familiar with the show called Ape.
Yes.
Yeah. And when I got the assignment, Ape happened to be like around the corner, and I went, and it just so happened about 5 or 6 contributors to Weirdo happened to be there. And so I go, oh, this is cool. I can just talk to them now. And I did. So, let's see. Now, putting the book together, for me, it was just a matter of just asking everyone the same 10 questions and just kind of putting everyone's answers of recollection, just to save my sanity. Was there any sort of rhyme or reason to how you were going to compile this? Because I'm sure people had different memories about what they did and stuff like that. So were you trying to make some sort of cohesive narrative, or just do your best with it?
No, not at all. It was just what did they want to talk about, and just to basically give them free rein. I had 3 different approaches to getting the testimonials, which make up it makes up the majority of the book, and that was to simply ask them for a testimonial and to write it up themselves. And sometimes they struggled with that notion, so they would prefer if I had asked them questions via email, and then I would cobble together a testimonial from that. Or I would, if it was even more helpful for them, a lot of these people were busy, or it was just they were more comfortable with being on a phone interview. So I would call them up, interview them, and then transcribe it myself, and again, and cobble that together into a testimonial. So, no, there was a lot of, was it Rashomon? There's a lot of thinking, remembering things differently. Maybe not a lot, but there was some. So no, it wasn't. But I did decide that I'm going to do a straight history up front. I just had to do it. It became rather huge. The big essay I did, opening essay called "The Weirdo Story," which really looked at it. There are different stories here in the book, and and Crumb, who really does enjoy the book, he likes it a lot. He says that it's as much a history of the alternative comic scene, if not the entire decade period of the 1980s. And in a lot of ways, I'm happy he said that, and it's true. It is a pretty thorough history of alternative comics through the 80s, as well as being a very specific history of the magazine. But on another parallel, it is the story of Robert Crumb and Aileen Crumb living in Winters, California, in a small cottage, with Aileen giving birth to their only child, Sophie. And this all took place in the 1980s, and so I even went and thought it very pertinent to talk to his neighbors. And so I even got in touch with those who would participate in the photo funnies, and we're involved in this environmental tabloid called Winds of Change, which he'd worked on just prior to Weirdo. So I talked to a bunch of those people. So anyway, it's peripheral. And of all the adventures that I had doing that, I had reconnected with my stepsister. My father's second, he married again. It was his second wife, and the family that he inherited there were my step siblings, and I contacted her through Facebook, and she said, "Oh, you're in the comic books." "Oh, yeah, I was once in a band with Robert Crumb," which just completely floored me, and I was just right then working on the initial incarnation of this Weirdo retrospective, and so she wrote an essay, and that's got to be, what are the odds of that? And it was during the Weirdo years. I mean, she was in this Rural Sophisticates, which was the band that pretty much the wedding band that Crumb was a part of back in those days.
Now, when you approached Crumb, was it initially also just about Weirdo? I mean, why Weirdo? Why not anything else in his career? I know there's the complete Crumb volumes that have been put out and things like that. So what's the preference for Weirdo, just out of curiosity?
Well, it was that Peter was one of the editors of it, and I think the bottom line was, at the time, this is prior to your back issue essay, there was virtually nothing out there. There was almost nothing out there, except for what the comics, thank God for the Comics Journal. There was a long essay that Jim Woodring had done. There was a joint interview with Peter Bagg and Robert Crumb that was done for the Comics Journal in 107 or something like that. Anyway, that was specifically for Weirdo. And we used the cover image for that issue of Comics Journal. I used it in the back of the book, on the back cover of the book. But there was really nothing out there. So, so it was just basically it started off. I had nothing. I mean, I liked Weirdo. I didn't buy every single issue, but I liked it. I particularly liked Crumb stuff. I always thought that was best. I loved Peter Bagg. I've been a huge Peter Bagg fan since the early 90s. No, the 80s. No, I bought neat stuff and that. Loved him as a storyteller. Just and so that's really where it came from. Why Weirdo? That Weirdo. I mean, I couldn't think of any other. I couldn't think of any. I mean, it was just rife. It was just ready to be studied.
Yeah, I'll agree, because when it came out, my I wasn't really an historian per se when the magazine would come out, and of course I always collect the humor magazines, so I had Mad and Cracked and Crazy and everything else. And Weirdo came along as a little more lampoonish, I guess, than anything else. But I get all those, but it just kind of came, and then it was there a few years, and then it went, and I go, okay, I guess he got tired of doing it. I don't know what's going on, But then later, I did get more curious about it, because I go, what was this? Why did he do this? Why didn't he do more Zap, let's say, or something else that he's done in his life? Why this, And now I basically know the story, but at the time I was like, what made him do this,
Yeah, it's an odd magazine in the sense of that. Well, it's natural to compare to Raw. It's natural to compare it to Raw because Raw was coming out at the same time. People would always compare the two. One is highfalutin, fancy, pretentious, kind of arty, comic book magazine being Raw, and the other one being kind of, ground level, shall we say, pretty gritty stuff, and sometimes extremely rude and extremely politically incorrect at times.
Yes.
What? I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What we were just talking about.
Just how it came out almost out of nowhere, and it's been compared to Raw.
It was just ignored. I mean, it just has been, again, it just gets back to that. Just like nobody, I mean, it's, I write this huge essay that took me an entire summer to write about this historical look at Weirdo and all the context and all the connections it had with so many different things and that had gone on at the time. And the final line in it that I wrote was that Weirdo will always lose. It's a magazine for losers by losers. I mean, it's just this magazine, and I have to count myself as a weirdo too in a certain way. Certainly, I did that weird to do this book, but that it part of a family kind of thing, and we're very much any number of these. Contributors are never going to be, good enough to be in Raw, and I throw that under quotes, to be judged as being arty and all stuff like that. As wonderful as Raw is, and I'm not trying to put it down. But then Sammy Harcum, I asked him for his opinion. Of course, he does Kramer Ergot, which is a great anthology, and which is a highfalutin, fancy anthology itself. It's come out in huge editions, and it's just very prestigious, and his conclusion was that Weirdo will always win. So it's just like, sure, okay, I guess, and I guess I'm looking at it like we lose for winning. You know what I mean? We win for losing. However you want to say that. But,
now, I got the book the other day, and the first thing I noticed, and then I had to dig out the other book, it looks very similar in shape, design, and style to the R-Chrome, the Weirdo Years that Last Gasp also published, that just reprints all the material that he had in all those Weirdo issues. Was that a conscious decision on you or Ron's part, or is it just a fluke there? Or did you plan to make that a companion volume, as it were?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I planned it to be a complimentary. And, if we ever do the best of Weirdo, we would do another one that would, to fit into this library, We're looking into right now, probably doing a new edition, a revised edition of the Weirdo Years, which will include, and I've already done it actually, I've done an interview with Robert specifically about the stories, and the contents of his material within that book. So there'll be a new 16 pages that will be added to that, and looking forward to doing that,
Is that original volume out of print? I don't even know.
It's almost out of print.
Oh, okay. Because I got it way back when, because when that came out, it was perfect timing, because that's when I was working on my article. So I go, I get to read all this stuff without finding all the copies, because I was like you, I didn't get all the issues when they came out. I still don't have all the issues. It was just, this one's interesting. I probably got about half of them when they were originally released, and I don't know. I guess stores didn't always carry them. I don't even remember, but
I don't think it wasn't easy to find. It certainly wasn't in comic shops very much.
Yeah.
I mean, I always found my copies in, more eclectic bookshops, oddball bookshops and that kind of thing, and music stores and CD stores and that kind of thing. Wherever I think Tower Records have it.
Yep. Yeah, so I was going to say same here. I'm on the West Coast, but yeah, it's the same idea here. It wasn't necessarily in the standard comic book stores. They may get an occasional issue, but they weren't carrying all the publications by that point. It's like they couldn't. There was not enough shelf space, so it was just a matter of, oh, well, this can go. This isn't selling that well.
Yeah, there's a weird thing with the comic shops anyway. I'm very curious, and it should be any minute. We should find out what the orders are for through previews. What that's going to be. The traditional comics market wasn't all that supportive of Weirdo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it was supportive of. I probably wasn't very supportive of Raw either.
Yeah.
But which is unfortunate because Weirdo is truly a great magazine. I mean, it really it was remarkable in that it had 3 supremely talented editors who knew how to edit and knew how to encourage and nurture and just choose an incredibly eclectic crew of cartoonists and to nurture them to doing increasingly better work. Crumb had Dory Sita was one of his primary proteges in a certain way of that he nurtured and encouraged, and her work just grew exponentially. She was so talented, and unfortunately she died young. She died at 37, I think it was, 36 or 37. She died in the midst of the Weirdo run. So that her passing was what I would deem the biggest event that took place in the history of Weirdo for the Weirdo community.
Right.
So, and that was noted on the cover. It was a special Dory Sita memorial cover. So, for instance, that was there. And then, Peter came. Obviously, Plum was from the Zap world. He was the originator of underground comics in a certain way.
Right.
Peter was from the New York contingent. He was quite young at the time, and who knew? I mean, he was just a natural editor, and he was a really, really hard worker, and really, he has got a work ethic that's just amazing. I mean, after all, I think virtually every issue of Hate came out pretty much on time.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a lot. He did 28 issues of Hate.
Yeah, and then of course, Neat Stuff before that. So and that was like 13 or something. It might have been a little more, maybe 17.
Yeah, right. So, incredible. Yeah, and he did that. He got burned out just like Robert Crumb got burned out.
Oh yeah.
And mostly that was having to do the selection of the material that's going in the magazine. You're bound to reject any number of material, and sometimes from very accomplished cartoonists, and they did not take that well.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, not bad karma, but it was hard to deal with. You got to reject people, and they're both sensitive guys, and they are. Aileen got it, but Aileen brought in she brought in a raft of women cartoonists.
Yeah, it was a different magazine almost then, but it still had the overall look, but the feel was a little bit different. That's what I was going to say. Now, in your interviews, did you find people that were just really negative about the whole experience? I didn't seem to when I did mine for back issue, but I didn't go that deeply. I mean, are there any, still sour grapes or wounds or anything that haven't healed about the contributing in those years?
I don't think not really. No, pretty much everything had either calmed down or, like Peter, I spoke to Peter back a couple of, last week, midweek, and it was the first voice conversation that we had since he received the book, and he said he was cringing. He was worried that he was going to be, criticized a lot, and he's not criticized a lot in the book. Not that there would be any reason for it. I think it was just like, who knows, Because again, you have to reject people.
Yeah.
Because you only have a certain amount of space to bring it in. No, not really. There was Terry Boyce. She had that was another event, under quotes, that took place during the Weirdo years, which is that Terry Boyce was another women cartoonist under the Crumb regime, I guess, or the tenure of Robert Crumb as editor. She did pet penis stories that were very amusing, very cute, and not very well liked by a number of people. But they were amusing, and Robert liked them, so he printed them. With the death of Doricita, she went through a spiritual transformation of that she rejected the entirety of her underground comics work and not her cartooning, but her underground comics work. And she became a born again Christian, so much so that she became a minister. And she's still a minister to this day. She did give me, and she sent me an email, and she approved that I could use it for a testimonial. And of course I did, And she was ambivalent. She was definitely ambivalent. I don't even know whether she knew that she was as criticized as she was, because Mary Flynn had published a letter that came from Terry. And Terry was particularly religiously fervent when she wrote the letter, was pleading with her to save her soul and that kind of stuff. And Aileen and Mary were disparaging to her, and that's where it was revealed that she was a born again Christian and stuff like that. So, and that's discussed in history. Yeah. And I don't know how Terry's going to respond to that, but it's the story of the magazine. Right?
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. A couple more questions about this and future volumes. So you said the Crumb years is going to be reissued with extra information from you. Is there going to be another volume that would be the non-Crumb material?
There seems to be. I was just talking to Peter, and he says they're doing the complete hate, and they did the complete zap, and they just came out with the complete neat stuff, and the complete women's comics has come out. I would think it would be natural in a certain way if you're going to do. I've even mapped it out. If in various incarnations. Of course, I would want to helm such a project to see this through. Whether you do the complete Weirdo which is logistically, I can't imagine it being all that easy. But they did it for the women's comic. You've got to track down absolutely everybody. But there's, let's be frank. There's nobody better to track these people down than, dude. I was tenacious with some of them. And there was only one person who outright said no, they didn't want to be a part of the book. But as you see, I go, Weirdo's Not Forgot is a spread within the book that are all the people who either ignored my emails, my reaching out, or didn't receive my missives or anything like that. And that was pretty small, and most of them were European. So I could naturally, to be honest with you, this book originally was intended to be half history and half anthology. So there's going to be a reprint anthology of the best of or material from whoever there was testimonials from. And last gasp, that would be Ron Turner and his son Colin Turner completely left me alone. Would not, we would occasionally updates and stuff like that. But again, from the signing of the contract, the book was due in 2016. But, and it took a few more years. But I would, assure them that I was working on it. But it really grew, and it kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I almost sheepishly submitted it to them as a 288-page book. And they accepted it, and I think it's a good job. I don't want to brag, but this is the exact kind of book that I would want. Yeah. I would like a subject covered and this is not even enough. Yeah. If I had my druthers, I would add another 32 pages to this book and have detailed, biographies of every single person. Because their testimonials don't necessarily cover their background and stuff
Right.
like that.
I guess that's why I was asking about future volumes, because he hinted at it on the one, and then it's like, well, that type of material could be added to a future volume if you did an anthology of everybody. You could put the who's who, as it were, in the back.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Volume 3, there you go.
That'd be an insane amount of work to do for the amount of money that.
Oh, you can do it. No, I'm the same way. People always go, yeah, Mark, you can do a book about this. Oh, yeah, I can do a book about this. Do I want to do a book about this? But anyway, the good thing is you have all the contacts and you have the information, so it's like, it seems like something you would probably eventually consider or even do. So, you know.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. I think my budget for originally when it was back to being a half anthology, my budget was very minor for the page rate and the reprint rate that people would get. But but I had already been in pardon me, I had told any number of contributors about the page rate, and they were like, okay, well, sure, they wanted to be a part of it.
Okay.
So it would be a lot of fun either to do that or do the best of. I think the best of is probably logistically best, because I don't know, like, if you're going to do, let's say, like I said, I mapped it out to under the 3 editors. So you do the Robert Crumb as editor, and Peter as editor, and Aileen as editor, and there'd still be 300 and something page books, but this would be without the Crumb material.
Yeah.
So, and that is not exactly, the Crumb material by far is the most commercial material. I mean, after all, he did every single cover, and that was a reason that he did every single cover of Weirdo, and that was because he had a real fan base that was huge, comparatively.
Right.
So.
And sometimes that was pretty much all he did was the cover a couple times, I think.
No, he did interior of every single issue.
He did?
But,
okay. It seemed like there's one issue where he did very little in the interior and is basically a cover. But
there's a couple of times it was very, very little.
And then other times he did almost the entire issue, that was like, I noticed. So, yeah. But, I'm sure it's just his time considerations and what he felt like doing or whatever. But anyway.
And he was also doing, by the end, he was also doing Hop, and he was doing some other stuff. It wasn't just completely focused on Weirdo. He wanted to spread out and do something.
Yeah. And, as we both probably have realized, Weirdo's in its own time and space, and the likes of it probably will never be seen again, at least by this staff. It's like, if somebody ever wanted to start another thing like it, they'd have to start from scratch with completely new artists and writers, I would think, at this point.
Yeah, well, there's people like, Phoebe Gleckner, she had said that there really should be a magazine like this, and there were other Weirdo contributors who said that they would be a part of something. That certainly they would. Yeah. I could almost conceive of doing a one-shot, of doing a Weirdo 2020 or something like that. It could just be a one-shot kind of thing, and it would be, I can see extending the goodwill of the Book of Weirdo a bit for a few more years, possibly, out of it, because it's being very well received. I mean, I don't want to gloat, but what the heck, Robert Crumb really likes the book, and enough so that I had lunch with him, and to which he said it then, and I did a podcast with him. Did you get a chance to hear it?
I have not. I'll have to seek it out, or send me a link when we're done. But the only thing I saw is photos. So tell us about that meeting. You had photos of you and Drew Friedman and a few others. What was that? Was that just a celebration for the release of the book, or is it something else?
Well, no, that was very specific. I said, Robert, can we? Art Spiegelman was kind enough to facilitate it. Robert happened to be in town in New York for a gallery showing and a signing that he did at the gallery. And Art was able to get word to see whether I could come over and visit him and come over and see him. And he said, sure, absolutely, which was very kind of him. And so it really worked out very well, because Drew Friedman, who's done a cover illustration and is very much involved in all publicity for this book, he's been very much a partner in that aspect. He was there when we came in, and me and my brother came in, in a hotel lobby, and we sat down. It was just like perfect, and of him making a joke, Robert making a joke about my brother, and it just was. And look, it's a dream come true. I mean, I'm having lunch with the greatest cartoonist the world has ever known, and somebody I've been in awe of since I was a teenager, and it was just fun. It was just very relaxed and very fun. We talked shop and drew. We talked about mutual people we knew, and it was very casual, and it felt very good. It really comes out as the real personality of Robert Crumb is not this crusty old curmudgeon,
right?
But rather a really, really nice, gentle, kind, funny, but a man that tells it like it is. I mean,
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was good. Wow. It was great fun. And I've spoken to him since, and we've done a few interviews on the phone with him since. And, so it was very specific to. I told Robert, I said, you need to take pictures. They're going to mock up the book, and they're going to bring it with me. And that's really, of course I want to meet you, but we need to promote this book. I mean, I need to promote this book, so would you please do that? And he was very kind about that. Okay. And, I've been needed he wrote me a blurb, it's on the back cover, and so, I mean, I see this, look, egotistically, I see this as my one shot, and in a certain way of getting more interesting, different jobs, different projects and stuff like that. As much as I appreciate it and I'm grateful for all the work that I've done in mainstream comics and all stuff like that, I really have had a long and passionate love for undergrounds, and I really would like to get more in that realm. Anyway, but I still have a lot of eclectic work and stuff like that.
Well, I am so glad, and like I said, when I did the my article, I was very amazed that Crumb was so accommodating and everything, because, I always thought of Crumb this way, and I don't know if you did, we're kind of like echoes of Fritz the Cat being, done by Bakshi in the way he did, and getting ripped off on album cover payments and things like that he'd be just like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this stuff or something. And no, he was very nice, very accommodating, and, sounds like same thing with you. And, so the possibility of maybe a one-shot weirdo reunion book or magazine could be possible. It just didn't seem like it, years ago. It seems like, that's over and done with in the past. Yeah.
Well, I would, I mean, to a person, they all say no. They wouldn't be a part of a new one. No, I don't know. I would think it would be an extreme stretch for.
Oh, okay.
I really would think that. No, but I mean, Robert was very. Robert owns the trademark and the copyright for Weirdo. I mean, it's his property. He was very kind of obviously, of allowing me to use it so prominently. So. But look, please don't. I don't want anybody to get the idea that this a Weirdo 2020.
Yeah.
But it's just like a notion. It's a notion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not holding you to it. So you will not see it on your newsstands anytime soon.
Well,
but the other is probably a likelihood. Another volume of a compilation or something of past stuff, or even more history or something, is probably more likely, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And and I'm able already to parlay. I mean, I looked at the calendar, and I noticed that next year would be the 50th anniversary of Last Gasp, and pretty much Ron Turner's the last man standing.
He's the last gasp.
in the underground of the original underground publishers. And, I had to talk him into it. I had to talk him and Colin into it. I don't know if it was hard at all, but they agreed that we're going to be doing a 50th anniversary of Last Gasp book, and I'll be coming up to San Francisco and in August after San Diego Comic-Con, and going to dive into the archives, and we'll do a book for next year. And I'd really also like to do a book on the whole alternative comic scene of from punk in the late 70s to grunge in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, I would really like to really extrapolate this book even more. And,
right.
to do more of a history of this era and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're in town, this may work out to my favor or your favor, or whatever. There is a Silicon Valley Comic-Con that Steve Wozniak puts on in San Jose in August. Are you trying to time it for that, or is it just coincidence?
I had no idea.
Oh, okay. Which is only an hour away, so I'm just saying you might want to time it for that. It's like the third week in August, like the 23rd or something, for 3 days. But you could promote the book there, and if you're affiliated, are you aware of the Cartoon Art Museum with Andrew Farago as the curator?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. You might want to line something up with him, but, hey, he was another one of my podcast guests and a friend of mine, too. So, anyway, when you're out here, hey. Maybe
thanks. And also the plan is to go out to Davis, to go out to the Winters area, because, again, we interviewed a lot of neighbors and friends of the Crumbs, and so I think it's worthy to go out there and to be able to meet these people face to face and hang out with my stepsister and do a book signing up there as well. So we'll work out those plans as it comes. But as far as the near future goes, I'm going to be doing as much promotion as I can for the book. So we're going to in mid-May at the East Coast Comic-Con in Secaucus, New Jersey. We're going to be it's going to be a Weirdo reunion or a Weirdo event where it's the official release of the book.
Yeah.
The Book of Weirdo. Peter Bagg will be there, and Carol Tyler, and Drew Friedman, and Kaz, and any number of Mark Newgarden, and Paul Kasarik, and any number of Weirdo contributors are going to be there. And then we just, on June 6th, on Thursday, which just turns out to be the 75th anniversary of D-Day, we're going to be having a signing at the having a presentation, a panel talk, and all that, and a signing at the Society of Illustrators in Manhattan.
Very good.
And then San Diego. I don't have the official word yet about a Weirdo panel, but I'm quite sure that can be arranged. And and we'll be doing signings in San Diego. So, and there you go. And then, of course, like we mentioned, up in the San Francisco area in August, and I'll squeeze this out as long as I can.
Yeah. So I have a few other questions. We can come back to Weirdo at the end and plug it, but I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about some of your other books. Some of them are just for more personal reasons, and I'm just kind of curious. So I interviewed Bill Shelley recently, and his new book is about Jim Warren. And I know quite a few years ago you did the Warren Companion, which is now kind of a high-priced collectible. Is there any chance of that book being reissued at any time?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Would that be a revised version or something like that, or just the same one again with just a new printing? Or
yes, revised.
Ah, okay, very good. Yeah, because I happened to luck out and get one at cover price, and then it was gone. That's it. And I see sometimes, well, it's usually the hardback version is like $300. I'm wow. But I did interview Bill and asked him, it's like, how does yours differ from yours? And he says, well, I focus more on the man and not all the contributors and things like that. I have still not gotten his book yet, so I need to do that. But then other books that I know, I don't know if you worked on them or what capacity you worked on. So I was just kind of curious. There's like a Joe Kubert book and a John Byrne book and a Swamp Men book, it says. Were you contributor or writer the same way as all these other books, or are there any books you've done that you just did like graphic arts or something, or just for a minor contributor?
Sure. I was a minor contributor to True Brit. I contributed, I think, I interviewed Brian Hitch and Hunt Emerson. And I did I do design work for a lot of books.
Okay.
I'm working on a Mac Rayboy book right now.
Okay.
I'm doing the design for that. But the other books that you mentioned, I was pretty much they were mine.
Okay, because some of these I don't have, and I'm like, I need to get these. Like one I would like to get, and is the Reed Crandall book, and that one's actually gone up in price too. And it's like, what is it with these people to do these low print runs on these books? Is there a chance for that one to go back into print too, or no?
Well, of course, I'm not the publisher. I tend to doubt it.
Yeah.
It's just that, I did low orders. I don't know. Maybe the word needs to get out more. I don't know if people know, but do it now. If for the Mac Rayboy book.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that it's unlikely. It's unlikely that to do a softcover version of that book. But
got it. Okay.
I just designed that. I didn't.
Oh, okay. That one you did just design. Okay, so I don't have that one. That's why I had to ask about some of these. And then another one, I think you said the Rayboy book, and then is A World of Tomorrows. It's like the history of the company. What's your involvement on that one?
Well, it was my idea, and it's again I had to talk John into it. I don't think it was hard to talk him into it. It's an oral history. It's an oral history of the company. We're involving everybody who had pretty much any major thing to do with the company. It's a nice. It's a nice. It's kind of obviously it's a little bit of a vanity thing, but it's my way of giving back to. Me and John have been obviously we broke up for a period of time, and that was there was a strain there that had taken place, but our friendship prevailed, and I never, besides my brother, whom I've done film documentary on Will Eisner with, and we're working on a 4-act play about it's called The Golden Age. It's about the early years of comics. John Morrow has been the finest collaborator I've ever had, and and that's one of the reasons that Comic Book Artist at Top Shelf didn't last as long as it probably should have, and that was because I didn't have anyone to collaborate with. It was just me, and that might sound a little childish, I guess, or infantile. I don't know, but it's a lonely life sometimes, and it's great to have a collaborator, and I want this to be as much a testament to my friendship.
Yeah.
And,
I agree with you. I mean, anything I've done for Tomorrows, it's mainly minor contributions or doing articles for Alter Ego or Back Issue or what's the other one? Comic Book Artist. There we go. It's like I've worked with John indirectly or directly, and with Michael Urey and yourself, and it's like it is more pleasant, I guess, for lack of a better term, to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and work with than just to say, am I doing this right? Is this okay? That type of thing.
Yeah, and you and I are working together again right now, and I'm about to lay it out, a Warren Crummer piece for my magazine Comic Book Creator. So it's great.
And how many issues of Comic Book Creator are there? Is it like 17 or is it more at this point? I lost track.
I'm working on 21.
21, okay. All right, but you're ahead of what I've seen out. Maybe I've seen 19 or something by now. But and how's that going for you? Is that a different experience than the Comic Book Artist, or similar with a different title?
Yeah. It's a different paradigm. It's really not the same. I have to say I was enormously spoiled, I think, with Comic Book Artist. And it was very well received, in the beginning. I mean, I think we definitely went through 2 printings of CBA number 1. And it was pretty much very well acclaimed. I mean, I was really lucky, the response. But that, I think, had to do with that there was very little else out there.
Yeah.
There was Comic Book Marketplace, a wonderful magazine, but of course that was, had to do with the value of things to some degree. But I really lucked out with that, and I just didn't approach this kind of what I call a carpet bombing approach of like I look at a subject and for instance, you and I worked on the Harvey Comics issue, right. And that was we try, and that's a huge look at that. I can't believe your book. I can't believe how many pages is it?
It's 700 something. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just 700. It's like so huge, fantastic, and just the stuff I love. I mean, very happy to receive it.
Well, I'll tell you a little about that because I don't know if you know. It's like originally I was just going to take the Comic Book Artist issue and expand upon it. And then as I started working on it, I said, I can't do this. This is not working. And it's like I almost gave up on the project. I said, it's too late. It's 10 years too late. Everybody's passed away. I can't do this and everything. And then it just dawned on me, I can't just expand it. I really have to start from scratch and start over, which is what I did. And then it worked. It's like, I take a few things from the Comic Book Artist issue, but I couldn't use that as a basis anymore. I had to, start from a different angle and cover the entire history, in detail as best I could. So obviously I did go for detail. And that's what you got there, I hate to say it was originally supposed to be through tomorrows, and then, John got a little bit cold feet about it, and so I ended up bringing it over to Bear Manor again, which, they saved the day and it came out. So, no hard feelings to John. I wish it did come out through tomorrows, but it is what it is, so... Yeah.
Oh, great job! Really enjoyable.
You.
I mean, I wish I wouldn't. I mean, hopefully I can do a number of train rides, and so I get a chance to read it. I mean, I love that stuff. I mean, there's just, me. I mean, I'm a freak for Warren Kremer. I mean, I really am, and it's just like, and it's because of you, and it's because of working on the Harvey Comics issue that I started. I used to think it was the artist that I most enjoyed. It was the work of Ernie Cologne, and and I still love Ernie's work. Love it. Mm-hmm. But the Stumbo stuff, and just whatever. I'm just a complete nut for that stuff, and I'm really glad that we can do a feature in the magazine.
I hope the book comes out. I mean, it's not that it's delayed. Well, it is delayed, but it's just because the Kremer family wants it perfect. And so they're going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and, just to get everything that and it is their father, so I do have to respect that. So, it's taken longer than I expected, but, that's what happens. But they're very cooperative. They gave me a lot of images, a lot of pulp illustrations, things that nobody's ever seen before. So, and then of course I got the requisite stuff, that everybody has seen before. The Heritage Auctions has the Casper and Stumbo and Richie Rich and everything else. But I delve into the Star Comics and then the stuff he did at Ace and other publishers prior to Harvey and things like that. So.
Wow, yeah, really great. Yeah, and he was very grateful for, I think it was Bill Janoka who had interviewed him for...
Yeah, there's two major interviews, and I got his, and I got the other one, and unfortunately the guy who did the other one, his name escapes me, please forgive me. But yeah, there really was only two major interviews with Warren Kremer in his lifetime, and... I take
and I was very grateful to be able to print Bill Janoka's, and Warren was so grateful for it that he actually had a picture taken of him and his wife holding the issue.
Yeah,
and sent it in to me, and
that floored me, because
that's great.
And I go, oh, now I know for sure that Warren saw something that I wrote, because I used to send. I mean, here's the sad part. Is a preview. It's like I used to send him issues of Harveyville Fun Times, and I even wrote him a letter saying, "Hey, can I interview you?" And he never responded. I said, "Well, he's probably sick, old man. I shouldn't bother him." And I was a little more shy back then. And it turns out, oh yeah, he would have talked to you. You probably should have called. And it's like it never occurred to me to call. Back in the phone days, it was long distance back then. Back in the still wrote letters. And so I probably could have talked to him at some point, but never did. So.
Yeah. I wish I had spoken with him too. Sure. Yeah, I know exactly how you felt. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, look, I mean, Kirby. I would write letters to Kirby and not have the nerve to mail them. And I really regret it. Because when he passed away, it was immediately I had a regret of like, not. But he meant so much, mate. And, we're only human, right? But I have no predilection now because it's all borrowed time. I just see there's so much I want to get done. And I just turned 60, so it's getting up there. Yeah. So just keep plugging away, I guess.
A few years younger. I'm 52, but yeah, it's amazing that time slips away so fast. And I did meet Kirby once, but at the time he seemed young and healthy still, and it's like, oh, he's going to be around for a while. I didn't think Stan Lee length necessarily, but I thought he'd be around a few more years, and then just he was gone. That was it. And so I was there that one year. The photo's gone around of him dancing with his wife, at the convention.
75th, right?
Yeah, and then he was gone after that. So it's like, oh, okay. So I never really talked to him much either, but at least I met him, so I can say that. But
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet him when I was quite young. Yeah, that was very, very special. I was able to, I did the Kirby 100 Centennial book a couple of years ago, which is up to now was my biggest success, and that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. No, I actually haven't seen that. Those are a couple I wrote down. Like Kirby 100, and there's another Kirby Lee Nuff Said. I mean, how do those books differ? What are you talking about in each one?
Oh, that's Stuff Said. No, that's John Morrow's book.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
He did dedicate it to me, which is very nice of him. It was quite a surprise to see that. But no, I was going to prepare that book. It was his part grew so big that my thing will wait till the future. But no, that's all him.
Oh, okay.
Sorry
about that.
The Kirby 100 was both me and John. I had to. That was another one. There's going to be Kirby's. I mean, I long thought about it. What was the Centennial going to be? What would we do in 20?
Right.
I wanted to do. I literally had a dream about doing a Kirby convention, just called King Kong, that was just going to be devoted to Jack Kirby. So from there, we were going to do this big symposium kind of thing, and whatever, and then we organized it, got a lot of people involved, and then people got really busy, and then we just said, well, that's it. I'll just do what I do best.
Yeah.
What I know best, anyways. We'll do a book.
All right. Well, I guess I'll kind of wrap it up because I know we had to reschedule time here, and you might be a little bit of time crunch, so I don't want to go too long. But I guess if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that, and how would they get your books, and how would you get the Book of Weirdo?
The best way is to go to lastgasp.com. That's lastgasp.com, and you'll see it there. You could also, that's of course available through Amazon and through Diamond as well. To get in touch with me, I guess, you can look up my name on Facebook, Jon B as in boy, Cooke with an E, and so you can search for me there. I'm doing a podcast now called Subterranean Dispatch.
Okay.
So hopefully about to get on Amazon. So iTunes. So we'll see. I want to just whatever. Yeah. So that's the way to do it.
All right. And any final thoughts or anything else for today?
No. I hope people can come by and see me. When I'm on either coast. And that would be great. Very excited about this. Very happy that you got in contact with me for this, and I do appreciate. I didn't know that you had done the weirdo thing. I think it was you who had mentioned it, and then I'm like, oh, huh. And then I looked it up, but it was quite late in the game, and honestly, many people had said the same thing.
Which was what? Which was what?
Well, the testimonials or the answers that they gave you on email, they had already given me. So,
I see. Yeah.
I'm talking about referencing it.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one reference, so I mean, I did. You did a very nice job there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, I didn't know what you had written at that point. It's just people wouldn't, to be honest, they just said, what happened to his book? I thought John Cooke was doing this book. And I go, he's doing something separate. I had to say something. I didn't know what to say, and you were. And I didn't want to say that you weren't doing it anymore. Then they'd be like, what? And, it was worth the wait. I'll say that. I'll leave it at that. It's like, but I was giving kind words the entire time. It's like, he's just working on it and wanting to make it the best book he can make it, and it did. It came out very well. So I'm very impressed. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark.
All right.
Thank you very much for doing this.
All right. And thank you for being on this podcast. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and thank you again, Jon B. Cooke, for being my special guest. This has been the final episode of Season 1 of Fun Ideas Podcast. Episode number 37 and Season 2 will be coming soon sometime this fall. I want to thank you all the loyal listeners who have tuned into this season, and be sure to catch all the episodes you miss and come back when the season resumes. This has been the Fun Ideas Podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2019 Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you very much, and have a good night.